right, thank you very much. And hello, everyone. I'd like to first thank you for joining. I mean, really, thank you because I know that many of you are probably experiencing webinar fatigue. And with so many demands and tasks pulling at us, we have to protect our most precious asset, and that is time. So my goal for you in the audience is to educate you on how the ProNovos Intelligence Cloud helps Sage customers solve business problems utilizing data. And the best way that I can do that is by letting you hear from a customer that is actually doing it. With no further delay, let's kick things off with a short introduction. My name is Bruce Orr, and I'm the founder of ProNovos. I'm also a data scientist, which means that I'm one of the biggest nerds that you'll ever meet. I mean, seriously, who in their right mind decides to start a business that focuses on construction data? I love what I do, but it's also safe to assume that I'm not called to my daughter's school on career day to talk about my job. Enough about me. The next person that I want to introduce and the man of the hour is Mikeal Kanouff. It has been a true privilege to get to know Mikeal and learn about the business and data challenges he has had as an estimator, project manager, operational manager, and I'm sure that there are other titles that I'm leaving off. Mikeal, I can go on and on about who you are and what you do, but I'll hand it over to you and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and McClone.
Yeah, so Mikeal Kanouff, the operations manager for McClone in the Washington area. I have 4 very busy kids that kind of keep me all over the place. And, as we have progressed through, I've been working for McClone for 15 years. And as we progressed through really just trying to find the best technology that's out there and something that we can utilize for our company. We've seen a lot of different ones out there. And when we worked with Bruce for the last few years to really come up with the things that we'll show today. I'm looking forward to showing them, and I think we've done some pretty cool things to really try to wrap software around our business and not the other way around and try to chase down software. So.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, I have just a couple of slides. I have to put in a short plug around ProNovos's Construction Intelligence Cloud, and then I'm sure we are all here to hear how McClone is basically running their business using ProNovos and Sage. So, with ProNovos, the things that we focus on specifically are just making insight or turning your data into insight. We look at data as something that is fluid. So things like forecasting future work and trends is something that is inherent in the system. Comparing your projects to see why some are underperforming but others are not is always at the top of mind of many contractors. Again, that's a component that is built into the application. The other thing is around field productivity. So field productivity and billing reports is something that is, again, really important. Last but not least is having sharper whip reporting and automation. That's really where we started, and we spent a lot of our time trying to get creative and minimizing the manual process, but also automating as much as possible. Now, when you think of ProNovos, the Construction Intelligence Cloud is really a container that does so much. However, it being a data source that pulls data from just about any systems out there. So many people that utilize Sage also has probably like 4 or 5 other systems to run their business. That data goes into ProNovos, and you can do reporting and analytics. Machine learning and AI is really catching on in the industry, and we have components that plug right in and help you with bidding, and then application services. So we're all about data, and I can go on about ProNovos, but why don't I just let Mikeal tell us the best way he has learned how to use ProNovos with at McClone, And Michael, what I'm going to do is let you speak about something that we call the ProNovos Effect. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so we want to be direct with the way that we integrate. The two, I'll say the two halves, as I use it, the two halves. There's the construction cloud side, the analytics side, and really how to use data. And then there's the ops manager side, which is the side of the program that allows you to schedule trucks and track your job and information about your project. And really being able to utilize them in specifically the data, Sage information, in kind of an operational sense. So there's three sides that we wanted to look at that were a part of this. And pre-construction, everything starts with pre-construction. So we want to talk through how McClone is utilizing some of the information that's both in Sage and other systems, because we pull from Excel and we pull from a couple other ones to kind of tie everything together. And then the second one is just project management, and specifically just billing tracking and cash flow tracking. We'll show how it's integrated in to the system itself so that we can keep PMs kind of with the information at their fingertips, I'll say. And then just a direct operational aspect of it, to where it's how we take our equipment. We'll do it just to show real fast on how we schedule equipment, what it looks like to move equipment and track it through the system. But more importantly, put costs to that information, costs to that equipment, charge it to our job, and then ultimately upload it into Sage. We upload with the CSV. So it's, other than the CSV, it's touchless from the beginning to the end. So we just want to show three, try to keep it concise, but three major aspects of what McClone is doing to utilize ProNovos in kind of every aspect of the company.
So Michael, just a quick question. So there are, is it 5 offices across the United States?
Yeah, I did kind of a poor job there introducing McClone. So McClone's been a commercial concrete company, been around since 1975. Yeah, we have 5 offices: Washington, California, Hawaii, Colorado, Texas. And yeah, started out of California as a bridge company and just kind of progressed through the years. And yeah, we focus on commercial concrete work, high rises, parking garages, those type of structures, bigger jobs.
Yeah, so across the 5 offices, Sage is being used pretty much by everyone, right?
Yep.
Okay. However, I'm curious about the uniformity around the processes that these 5 offices have. I feel like in some of our talks, you said that it was kind of difficult to have different offices sort of be on the same page, and I'm kind of curious if you could speak to that a little bit, specifically how ProNovos, if ProNovos has helped at all in that with you guys with that.
Yeah, 5 years ago or so, we had what you call satellite offices, where we worked a little bit independently through each one. And through the last 5 years, we've restructured the company a little bit to try to bring everyone together on the same page. Get out of Excel, right? We were Excel heavy, and we still like Excel. I'm still a huge fan of Excel. In fact, I'll show some information that's still in Excel here in a little bit, and how we tied it to the Sage information. But as you go down that road and you have everyone doing their own spreadsheets, it really creates different workflows for each office, which means you're tracking information differently, which means that it's hard to really measure one area's productions, I guess, or performance from one to the other. So we've really worked hard using ProNovos to build, best way to say it, to build the reports that we built. They're not canned reports and the ones that we're going to look at. These are ones where we actually replicated our current processes, depending on the office, to make the integration easy for each office. I'll show you what that means here in a little bit, but basically we didn't open up this, and I know that, Bruce, you have a bunch of different reports that you've built and that can be used. McClone actually went a little bit of a different route and built ones that were built around the company and their current process to help operations ease into using a different software, because that's really where the rubber meets the road, and the difficulty with superintendents and PMs and project engineers trying to get everyone on the same page. It's a huge investment to look at a system like this and say, hey, is there a true benefit? We just feel like there has been.
So what I'm hearing is you didn't have to change your processes and conform your processes to meet the software. You essentially were able to configure the software to run your business.
Yep, exactly.
With that said, I'm just looking at the time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if you will be able to share your screen and walk us through some of the things that you guys are using.
Yeah, so let's see. Tell me which one you can see right now.
Let's see. I see 2 windows up, multiple tabs. Now I see one.
Yeah, I got the wrong one. I got the webinar on there. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, so the 3 aspects that we'll look at, I tried to prep all the screens, which is what you were looking at a second ago. What you're looking at here is this is the operations manager landing page. And this is where we control information about our projects. As you can see on the side, there's a way that you can take pictures and drawings and all that type of stuff. We're not really going to go through that today. I specifically want to focus on the Sage data. But there are some reports that we definitely want to show on here in regard to that information, in regard to pre-con. In fact,
and all of the jobs that previous screen, these are all the jobs that you track your cost in Sage, and it essentially syncs with the construction cloud, and that's what you're showing us, right?
That's correct. Yep, everything here, all links to Sage. And you showed that screen earlier to where you have a bunch of different systems that all kind of link together. So we'll have Sage, we have a SQL server that has separate information that we track at the project level. Excel, we're pretty heavy in Excel like most companies, but we figured out a way to tie that information in there as well. Those are probably the 3 biggest. We have a couple other tables that we feed into other areas, but those are the major areas that we end up pulling our data and marrying everything up.
Got it.
So what you're looking at here is the menu on the side, and we're going to look specifically at the reporting portion of, as we go through all of this, we're actually going to be looking at the reporting portion. There are different aspects that we look at. We're going to focus on this portion for the estimating aspect. And there's 2 reports that we want to look at. One is the non-labor measurable report, and I'm going to just click on the tab here to show it to you. And the other one is this labor history report. So I'll start with the labor history report. So what you're looking at is both Excel information that we've married on statistics about the project. Oh, and I should probably preface this whole thing. I have modified some of the data on here just for the sake of McClone's aspect and making sure that all of our information is not out there. If you're looking at this, it's not real. It's all been modified just so that I can share without any issues showing some of the information that's on here. But this is one aspect of what we want to say of Sage information and basically a real life application of how we're utilizing Sage information to affect our bids. What you have on the left-hand side here is these are a grouping of our 5,000 cost codes. There are regular formwork and non-labor cost codes. So you got heavy lumber and freight and expendable lumber, the things that we track on different aspects of our bid. And then we have the different variables and the different measurables that we use for each one of these bids. So we have each one of these non-labors as a percentage of our labor for the project. So we know what the ratio is from plywood cost to labor percentage, plywood cost per square foot, what our plywood cost per month is, and what our estimate versus actual is for that work. Now, right now we're looking for years of 2011 through 2013. You can see I've kind of just stripped out the job names here for talking purposes. But what we've been able to do is the raw information about our actual costs, they come from Sage. So we're pulling everything in, it lives real time in Sage. The information about our budgets actually come from Excel, one Excel source that we pull when it comes to our final cost report and where we pull that from. And the last one is a secondary SQL that we have that gives attributes and appends on attributes that we need to best look at cost histories. So for example, here you're looking at a group of projects that are in Washington, and you have the different, throughout the years, you have these different projects. Along over here, we've created this attribute to be able to say, well, what kind of job is this? Because a long span parking garage is different than a high rise when it comes to making sure that when you're bidding your work and looking at these past costs and these past measurables saying, is what we're bidding right now in line with what we've done in the past? Does this make sense? If we're ever going to bid something that's outside of these numbers that you're going to pull from a cost history standpoint, you need to have justification for them. Yes, every job is different, but once you start casting that net and you start taking a look at all of the information, especially over the years, you can really start to narrow down and find trends in there to be able to put against the project that you're doing, saying, hey, does this project make sense? You know, estimating, I was in estimating for 10 years before switching over to the operations side, and it's nerve-wracking. You have 50% of the information, you're going to put this huge budget out. And these are the type of things that you have that you need to look back on and say, does it make sense? Is the bids and the dollars that I'm putting towards this bid make sense based on everything that we've done in the past? So for example, if I were to bid a high-rise garage and I wanted to check my plywood square footage, which is one that we use a lot, I'm going to jump in here and I'm just going to select high-rise as the type of building. So here we're looking at 3 projects that have high-rise as a part of their building. And notice that my plywood per month changed drastically. It went from 9 something a month to 11 a month at 80 cents a square foot. So that's big, right? That lets me take a look at my next bid and say, hey, am I in line with this? I need to be bidding this at 79 cents a square foot or close to it, depending on the sequence and the structure, of course, and be able to justify these costs and really have this information at my fingertips. Now, I didn't have to dig through cost reports. I didn't have to go wonder, you know, who knows about this job, because usually it's only the senior individuals that can go back and say, you know, oh, this job that we did in the past, we should go look at cost histories for that one. Everything right here is just based on the filters and the information that we pre-populated into it. So from a non-labor standpoint, this is one of the reports that I'll say that we look at as far as past cost histories.
Right. So this is cost data and jobs that comes from Sage, some data that comes from Excel, and some data that comes from your proprietary SQL server. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
That makes sense.
And then the other side of that is the labor side. So the labor side gets a little bit more tricky based on all of the different aspects of the project and everything that we're looking at. But you can do a very similar filter on the project. So if I say I'm going to go to the Washington office, which is where I look at most of my work, and say I want to look at a job that has a certain square footage, under floor plates of 20,000 square feet. And then we want to look at shore heights, because shore heights is a big deal when it comes to production. I want to look at everything underneath 10 square feet. And then, same thing, I'm going to look at, flat slab only type structures, because the structure design makes a big difference. Well, now I can go take a look at this, and I'm looking at square foot productions, which means that this is how fast we can install formwork, based on the variables that we have in the system for years ago, for information years ago. And again, the costs come from Sage, the actual costs come from Sage. We have appended on information that comes from Excel and SQL on this report as well. But what we've done is we've created a process around making sure that these averages that we're looking at, this 25.4, is basically integrated into our estimates with the same justification. If you're going to bid a job and you're going to look at something from a pre-con standpoint, you need to make sure that you have justification on what your overall production rates are for that same type of formwork. So for example, I showed an example here. This is a project that we did a few years ago that I'll refer to a couple times. But what we did is we looked at past histories, what we did on these jobs and what we're bidding at. And the big thing that we come out of this is this right here. Based on all of our past jobs and based on the information that we're bidding on this job, how close are we getting? How much risk is on this job based on how we're bidding it right now versus what we bid before? Right now, this says that we're 10% over what our average for our past costs are. That just lets me know really how close we are, and especially as you do bid reviews and you're trying to show this information to senior management. And if you're going to go chase the job, how close you're going to end up getting. It really just allows you to really define how much risk is really on your job and how fast you're trying to go based on those histories.
And so I know a lot of estimators, they live in Excel, they use Sage estimating, and they're trying to get to that magic number. Before, I would assume that the process was different for a lot of estimators within McClone. Now, do you have like the estimators using this, or is it still somewhat of a
No, so the estimators need to use these reports. They need to pull those histories and put them into the estimate to make sure that, again, as you do your review, everything's in line with the past costs. And what it was before that we were able to go back and look at all this, it was a lot of just like manual data mining, a lot of going through and trying to look at projects and try to look at, you know, you ask the people who have been around, hey, have you ever seen this conditioner before? How did we bid it before? And you're really spending your time, instead of analyzing the information, you're spending time just looking for information.
Yeah.
So having, you know, that standardization that we talked about before, to be able to take a process and as a group decide what's the best process to make sure that we're covering our risk, bidding, whatever it may be, plywood or labor, whatever it may be. There's a unified process to where we're pulling actual costs, putting them into a standardized format that you can compare against how you bid. And that's really what we wanted to do. That's kind of the goal, is to show a way that you can take data, but then integrate it into your actual business workflows and utilize business intelligence to go make money, or maybe sometimes just to cover your risks.
Right. So what we're looking at right now, it's really interesting. Every customer that uses ProNovos use it almost differently, and there is the freedom of creating your own reports, your own analytics. So what we're looking at now, this is what McClone wanted to build. This is not the ProNovos team didn't help you with this. There's a lot of self-service what we're looking at now, right?
Yeah, and once you get the information in, it's not super difficult to build the reports. You just drag and drop information from kind of your visualization into the data. Obviously, Bruce, as you know, you structure the data. The way that we did it for McClone is Bruce took the information and put it into attributes and metrics, which is just numbers and words, I guess. So, for example, an attribute is job name, right? And then the metric is maybe cost, like labor spent. And you just drag those two things onto a visualization, and it allows you to see all of the information that's kind of already pre-filtered or pre-organized, is a better word, within the data model, within Bruce, the data model that you provide. And then we can just drag and drop and see that information kind of the way that we want to see it.
Got it.
So that's one, that's the pre-construction side. That's how we're using information or using data to really be able to make sure that we're covering our costs and approaching our projects in a good manner. The second one I want to show, and it's the same thing here. Bruce, can you confirm that you're seeing the 1036E project?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so again, all this is the main project dashboard, and I've gone into a project, I've clicked into a project, and you can see there's, you know, the options that are associated with the project. But specifically what we want to show when it comes to the stage information, and again, this information's not, it's doctored, I'll say, for talking purposes. But I can at least speak to the process in which behind it. This is one where we really did want to take the information out of Sage and present it to the PMs in a way that they're typically used to seeing it, which is very Excel, right? You see here that this visualization isn't anything special, I'll say. It's still got the grid lines in it. We put a little bit of a running total on here, but I can talk to that in a second. But what you're looking at is three things. You're looking at our running payments, you're looking at our running project cost, and then our running billings. So what we're able to do easily with having that information in here is see where you're no longer cash positive. So you can see in this graph that's on here, it would take us about 9 months after we started the job to get cash positive. Once we finally got through, and you can see our billings align with our payments here. Once we got through the project long enough, we finally get cash positive to where your payments coming in end up being greater than, of course, the cost for the project as pulled out of Sage. So this is every transaction out of Sage is what you're looking at here to get these totals. I've grouped them by month, so you can see the running sum. Again, it looks kind of bad right now because this information is doctored up, so it looks like it took forever to come cash positive on the job, but that's okay. You guys can kind of get the point to it. But really, this is just an easy snapshot to be able to take a look at a project and go, hey, just from a cash flow standpoint, how healthy are we being? How long is it taking for us to be able to fund this job? I'm sure as anyone on this webinar knows, that's one of the main battles. The odd thing in construction is that the subcontractor, at least, which is obviously what we are, we fund the project until we can bill far enough ahead to be able to get that. We're coming out of pocket to get this thing built. We on public projects where you have multiple layers of maybe we're working for a subcontractor that's working for the prime that ends up working for the city. It may be 90 days sometimes before we see our billings returned. And that means that for almost 3 months, we're funding the job just to be able to go out there and try to make money at the end of the day, which is crazy, right? And from a business model standpoint, that's crazy. So as much as we possibly can, we want to take this information and track this on month by month and saying, hey, we need to push our billings up. We are funding this job. It is not good business to try to get paid make your last check, your profit check. That is not going to go well. That means you have to have a ton of cash available just to be able to get the jobs, just so at the end you can finally make a few bucks. Obviously not what we want to do, not what we want to do. So as you have a vision, I added this visualization. What we started with in the Excel, as we talked about, I copied Excel as much as I can to build these reports. This is our billing payments over time. So what we build minus retention and then the payment for that for the associated month. So you can see them on here and see if there's anything outstanding, and then just plotted them as a running sum against the time chart here, so that you can really get a feel for how did we do financially on this job. Did we bill fast enough? Did we turn everything in at time?
This is interesting, Michael, and I have a question for you. I'm also looking at the time here, but one of the things that I often talk about is the data culture within organizations. And I'm curious, you've been the champion, meaning that you have been our main point of contact to deploying these types of analytics to the rest of the team. What type of changes have you seen, good or bad, around deploying this type of technology to other project managers?
Yeah, the hard part is always training. The hard part's always to try, there's so many new technologies out there that, and so many systems as a subcontractor that gets pushed on to us that we need to abide by. That anytime that you're going to start something like this, it's something for them new to learn. And a lot of these guys are great builders, not super technology savvy individuals, which is probably why construction lags as an industry behind many other industries when it comes to data and data integration. So yes, there's always a pain point when you first start to show these things and say, hey, there's a new way to do this. And they go, yeah. But once you can set it in a way that, hey, this process is just like you did it before, you buy off a little bit on that. And that's why I replicate Excel. And on this next sheet, it's definitely replicates Excel. But at least it allows them to, the learning curve becomes very minimal. Now all you got to do is jump into a project and click on this guy right here, and all of a sudden it just pops up. You don't have to do too much to be able to get to the information. Again, everything syncs from Sage. It's touchless. There's nothing that we need to do to get it out of Sage and into this system. We don't. It populates as a part of either the ETL or the sync, and it just it's just there for the PM or whoever may need to look at the information. Fortunately, to say for the positive portion of it, once you can do things like visualize data differently than what they've seen before, this starts to paint a different picture. And this is where you get a lot of good feedback, because PMs obviously they want to push their billings. They want to fund the job for as long as possible. And without being able to see this information in something like this is where you really get them like, oh, can I get access to that? Let me jump in there, because obviously I'll build something and try to get them to jump in and use it. So if you can kind of put the bells and whistles out there and say, hey, there's this new way to look at this information. What about if you looked at it this way? All of a sudden you have you can pique their interest and definitely make them understand quickly the benefit of going from something to like Excel, where you're copying and pasting, into something like this where you just click into it and a report just feeds off of the information.
Got it.
So I know that we're quick on time here. The other thing that I'll show that's a part of our receivables and trying to get our trying to just stay cash positive, I'll say, is really just having some information and some notes. So what we also have here is for each individual project, this report is filtered by that project. So once we if there's a certain transaction, say you talk to someone or you got paid for something, whether it be the PM or our accounting can jump in here and take a note and put in what the note is for what it was. But also we just have some information that we need to know that we just track, that we've added in here, like what our completion date is, what the GC's completion date is, some lien information if we decide to, and whether it's public and private. So this is exactly how we did it in Excel. This sheet looks just like it does in Excel. But what we wanted to do is just create that view at an add job level, to where now it's nice, because if you go in here and you create notes, it's not someone trying to open up the same Excel sheet and you've got multiple areas of notes or different versions of the sheet even. But this is all just stored in one server, so that if anyone puts in a note from any spot, you can just see it. This same report, or a very similar report, is viewed by our CFO, where he can just see all the projects. So though the PM doesn't need to see everything, they just need to see what's filtered on their project, there's another one that allows them to see all of them. And you can jump in there and see where we're at with any project at any time, and you can filter by date, of course, and filter by active and everything else that you want to filter your information by. But it's all one shared data set, and that's really helpful from an efficiency standpoint.
So let me make sure. I love seeing what our customers are doing, because, like I said, no environment is the same. But if I gather what you're saying, you're basically capturing data around your billings. I see there's accounts receivables is highlighted, so that's what we're looking at. You're writing back. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So for this information, we're writing back. For this information, we're pulling out of Sage.
Got it. That actually goes to a question. If you're okay to take a question, I have one that I like to read you.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of subcontractors tend to use whatever tool their GC uses to manage projects. What benefit has McClone seen from having their own internal system, and can ProNovos connect to GC tools like Procore?
Yeah, so I guess the Procore piece I'd leave to you. But as far as why we would want to manage this ourselves, because we're asked to do the same things. We've been asked to upload daily reports or whatever it may be into Procore as well. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is the uniformity of the company. So if you're using another system, that means that every project, the project team doesn't have one way of doing something. Let's say they use, GC is using Procore, so that project team is using Procore. Let's say the next one's using PlanGrid. So PlanGrid does kind of partial project management, but it doesn't quite do everything. But that's how they're accessing drawings. So you have one project team that's doing something one way, and then another project team that's doing it another way. That doesn't create the checks and balances that we need on our side to ensure that we've checked all the boxes as far as, did you get all your safety inspections done? Did you do a daily report for every day? Did you send a daily report every day? We can't monitor that in other people's systems like we can here. All of that, photos, do you have all your photos? Maybe we're taking impact photos, and we don't want it to be a shared photo. We want it to be a photo that's just for us and our internal use. but we may need later on if there's a delay claim or something like that. So we're going to go document all of this stuff. You got to have your own system. You got to have something that you can rely on, that you can train your team on to be able to function, I think, in any kind of real organized manner, for sure.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That is interesting. That's an interesting point. To answer the second question, yes, ProNovos can connect back to other tools like Procore, PlanGrid. So yes, to that question. So, sorry, Michael, I thought now was a good time to at least get one question in.
No, it's good. So that's really the way that we track our payments and our billings. And again, trying to touch on all three aspects: pre-construction, using the data within Sage for the checks and balances within our estimates themselves. Obviously, in construction, for project managers, know your costs, have the information at hand for everything that you're looking at, not just items that are, as a part of your project management software ops manager here, but really the billings, the information, the actual data on where you're at and what you've costed to date, without having to pull that information, Excel, copy and paste, that type of thing. The third aspect that we talked about was due to equipment management. And this one kind of touches all aspects. It goes from what it looks like to try to create a transfer, and we'll just briefly kind of work through that to really show the billing side of that transfer and be able to show what the equipment looks like and charge for that equipment against our jobs. So as a concrete company, we have a lot of form equipment. We have forklifts and shoring posts and all of this stuff. You obviously buy them, depreciate them, you have to charge it against your job because you have a cost for them. So we have our own system. I'm sure that you can come up with any billing cycle that you want to using ProNovos. We just do a daily rate charged at the month's end. So sometimes it's 28 days, sometimes it's 31 days, but we have a system to where we take the equipment and we bill against them. Again, I think I said this in the beginning, other than the CSV import into Sage, it's a touchless system, meaning that the request of the equipment that goes into from the foreman needing the equipment on site, all the way through the monthly billings, the PM or the monthly cost, the PM approving those costs, and then our CFO taking that information and putting that into a CSV so that you can import it into Sage. Technically, that is the only button that you have to click, but it's streamlined from there. So let me pull open.
I was going to ask if you have an example of that, but
yeah, let me pull it open on here.
All right.
Set it up on the screen here real quick. So I kind of have a test project in here. So let's go to the transfer review. So this is a part of the operations manager software. This is the trucking request side. So I made one for presentation purposes here. But what you're looking at is the different aspects of trying to get equipment from either the yard or a vendor to your project. We're looking at a draft here, which is basically what it sounds like is a draft. But there's a process where you can gets approved by the yard once it's scheduled. Once it's scheduled and it's sent to your job, you need to accept the truck, which is this one. And then if there's any issues on the truck, it pops up here. But these tiles that are on here basically just represent a truck. So in the truck, you have what your pickup date is, what your drop-off date, so when you're going to pick it up from the location and when you're going to drop it off, some contact information, and then the equipment that you're going to have on the truck. So here we have HV, which is just part of a forming system, and then amounts of them, and then it just calculates the weight and a couple other things for you. But what this allows you to do is gather information about the trucks, about when it hit your site, about when it left your site. All of that information is now contained within here and we have access to. So once we take this information, now we're not going to go through what it looks like to actually inventory. Obviously, you can see what your inventory is and everything on the job, which is what it uses for the report side. But integrated in here, once you go to the reporting side, there's this allocation costing reports. And you can look at the project allocations, and I'm just going to filter it here on the screen. You can look at the allocations for a particular project based on what has been sent to that project. So let me pull one up here. In fact, perfect. So again, I know this is my test project here, so the information's gonna look a little bit funny.
So the data came from Sage. You guys are managing your equipment movement in the construction cloud, and what you're showing us is what?
So what you're looking at here is the transaction of each equipment.
Okay.
So based on when things were sent to the job and when things were sent off of the job, we've gathered the information within the system, and we've put it into a very simple report that just says what project you're on and ultimately what's on the project, when the transaction happened on or off, what you shipped on or off your project, and then what the cost is for the equipment. So what this has done, it allows us just to take all of those transactions and create this is for the month of March of 2021. So we have all that information, and we've created a transactional log here and put our monthly rate against it, because you can put your rental rates in there, your internal rental rates. And then we have this information kind of at our fingertips to say, hey, for each one of these categories that we have, this is steel column forms, what's the charge against the job this month? Well, for this one, we have $6,300 this month in rental because we have a bunch of column forms. And this will happen on any of our equipment. So what we then take this information, we upload it, we simply come in here and just export this as an Excel file, which is basically our CSV. We do have a sheet that we use that takes this information, kind of washes it, puts it into a format that's acceptable for Sage to upload. So we just run a quick macro on it, and it cleans up the information based on a per project item, and it adds the cost code for the equipment as well. And then we upload that into Sage. And what that does is that gives us all of those costing reports that we saw before on some of the other items. That gives us those transactions without actually having to do anything. So everything's integrated into the system from the guy on the job site that only cares about getting the equipment. He doesn't care about the monthly cost. The foreman obviously doesn't care about what it's going to cost the project. He just knows that he needs it because he needs to build it. All the way down to our CFO, who imports this into Sage. It's all integrated into the system to where you have all of this information all in one spot. We used to do this in Excel. So it used to be Excel transfers. You're going to want some equipment. So you type up what you want, you send it out. You're then trying to figure out what's on site. It doesn't categorize it anywhere. It doesn't, it doesn't take it and give you an inventory anywhere. And then afterwards, you have to take your guess at what's on the job, and then you charge the job, because obviously the job needs to take the brunt of the cost for when you purchase the equipment. Now it's all automated. So again, trying to show how you can take data and how you can take the information behind it and create a process that allows your operations to become more efficient, quit having your PM really be able to focus on the project itself instead of copying and pasting or trying to do redundant data information within Excel. All of that is gone. Now they just take a look at the information that's on here and make sure that all the inventory makes sense and hits approve, and ultimately it ends up going into Sage without actually having to touch the information.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty cool. And it seems like it has streamlined things for you guys. Do you feel that? Well, let me ask. I always ask our customers whenever I have the chance about the experience. Has this been more or less challenging than you expected starting out, or is it around what you expected?
I think it was a little bit of a slower start than I thought. To get to know the information in the beginning, there's obviously very little to show from it. So there's I would almost want to draw some sort of like bell curve or something, that when you first start into it, you're learning how to use it. You're trying to figure out what it is, and you're really trying to build a report to best help your operations. And then you hit this point where once you get all the information set up and you understand how it works, the amount that you're able to produce with almost no cost, because everything's drag and drop at that point, is that's really where you're trying to get to. Then you have all of your information already set up, and you can build and see that information however you want to. By then you got a couple, power users that kind of know how to do it and know how to build these reports out. And then all of a sudden your yield is just so great from the information that's there. You're able to gather so much information and really use it operationally. We had our yard manager complain about last minute trucks. Hey, people are asking for trucks last minute. So we had all the information in the system. So we just created a quick report that allowed you to take your delivery times, when it was requested, because there's the timestamp that you can access on when the request was created, and then when it hit the job site. And we started to measure that time. And then we created a company standard around it. So, hey, you need to have 3 days. You need 3 days before you actually hit the OK button on when you need that to when it hits the job site. And we can take a look at that information now. You can go back, and for every transaction, we now have a measurable or a KPI that we can look at that allows us to say, are we being efficient in our operations? Because as soon as we have all these last minute trucks, we are not efficient. It's just the way that it goes. But if we know that we take a look at our transactions, we're constantly 3 days ahead, hey, I'll know it from our yard manager either way. But secondarily, it allows us to go back and address those issues if they do come up. So that's what I mean. Once that information was already there, this other need came up, and it's like, hey, we have this problem. Oh, well, let's just pull a quick report over, drag a couple attributes over, put our little time attribute on there, and we took a look at it and we go, yeah, shoot, we're having a lot of last minute trucks. Go to the superintendent and say, hey, this is the information. You've got to get better than this, and allows you to put that information and really bring it to light. So that's that quick turnaround once you get everything in.
Yes, I've been there on the journey with you, and I never asked that question, but I was just curious about it. I'm just looking at the time here. I think we might have scheduled it for 45 minutes, an hour tops. But I'm a firm believer in, not holding people if we don't have to. So let me just see if there are any additional questions. And while I'm looking, Michael, I have one question for you. And I always think about the future of construction technology. You and I had a conversation about setting the bar, and there's a bar that was set, and I am sure that McClone has a bar of their own. So now that the bar is set for business intelligence or analytics, what do you think the next thing is that McClone will be looking at in terms of technology to make you guys more efficient? Are you looking, everything so far has been about diagnostic analytics and descriptive analytics, but what about predictive? Is that on the horizon at all?
Yeah, we've played around with it. Probably going to need your help with that one. But yeah, once you have all that bid information and you gather, I think we basically hooked up out of our Excel estimate template. We created a little button that pushes some information to SQL, and we gather like 120 different data points. I think the goal, yeah, that's a great point. Take that information and go, hey, what kind of trends can we put into an estimate to where maybe it can tell us what it expects the productions to be based on, the information that we've already given it, right? I know that's that type of item would be, that's amazing. That would be super cool to be able to look at a bid and say, hey, based on this information, maybe who the general contractor, the time of year, all of those type of things that we see the project team, this is the expected results. That would be super cool.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that is the area that we focus on a lot, and can't wait until you guys get to that place. So we're wanting to go down that path.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you think that our audience, our Sage Tug Timberline user group audience might want to hear or you want them to know about, your engagement with Sage and the ProNovos platform?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is just to know that just like anything, it takes proper planning to make something worth it, but it's really the only way to be effective in business. And starting to utilize data is no different than any other thing that you're going to do in business. You have to be proactive about it, and you have to realize that it's a true need. It will be. It's already. I say it's the future. I can't even say that anymore. Every other industry is utilizing it, and construction has just lagged. And you gotta know that there's a benefit. And that was really the goal here, was try to show what some of the benefits that we've done, operational benefits, understanding really what business intelligence means, and then be able to apply that and show what it looks like to apply that. That was the goal here. Yes, it took us to have some effort in trying to get there. But as you can see, now we can, we've got like the billing thing that's touched us for the rest of McClone. Like the amount of hours I've spent used to dealing with that versus what it is now. I mean, the investment is a no-brainer. But just know it's investment. It's something you have to kind of work towards and make sure that you're proactive about.
Great. Well, if you stop sharing, I will put your information on the screen, and I assume if anyone wants to reach out, they can reach out to you for any questions.
Yeah, I will try to stop here. Oh, there it goes.
All right. Well, I don't think there are any other questions here. So, Mikeal, I definitely appreciate you taking the time to present this information. I know you're traveling right now, so it's been a pleasure. And for anyone that wants to learn a little more about ProNovos and what we do, my information is on the screen. Please feel free to reach out, and thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mikeal. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. If you'd like, we can take just a quick second here. If anyone has any additional questions, you can either raise your hand and I'll unmute you, or you can certainly submit those questions in the questions pane. I know today's presentation was very informative, so if you need a second there, feel free to submit them and I'll read them out for you. In the meantime, while we're waiting on that, as soon as you close out today, there will be a brief survey. If you don't mind taking that and letting us know what you thought of the presentation, and if you had any questions for Bruce or for Mikeal, or if you're interested in learning more about ProNovos, please make sure to fill that survey out and let us know. And then that way we can provide your information to our presenters today. Well, it doesn't look like we had any other questions come in, so I guess we can wrap up the presentation today. Once again, thank you so much, Mikeal. Thank you, Bruce.
Yep.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Bye, everyone.